Ethan wandered through the ruins of what was once a thriving city. The air was thick with dust, the sky forever gray. The sounds of life had long since been silenced, replaced only by the eerie whispers of the wind as it swept through the empty streets. Nature had begun reclaiming what was once man-made. Vines climbed the skeletal remains of skyscrapers, and animals roamed freely where people once lived. It had been weeks since the event, weeks since the last human had been seen. Ethan thought he might be the only one left, and he couldn't quite wrap his mind around that idea. How had the world fallen apart so quickly? How was he, just a regular man, still here while everyone else had vanished? But he was alive. That was the only truth he could cling to. He didn't know how much longer he would survive, but he knew he had to keep moving. For the past month, he had searched tirelessly for signs of life, but all he found were ghosts, empty homes, abandoned vehicles, shattered windows. It wasn't until one fateful morning, as he was scavenging for food, that he saw her, Sophia. She was standing in the middle of a destroyed park, looking like she had walked out of a dream. Her long brown hair was tangled and wild, but her blue eyes were sharp, scanning the surroundings. She didn't notice Ethan at first, and for a moment, he simply watched her from behind a broken wall. His heart raced, not out of fear, but from something he couldn't quite explain. She was beautiful, even in the midst of the apocalypse. Ethan stepped forward cautiously, his boots crunching against the debris. Her head snapped toward him, her eyes narrowing as if she had been waiting for this moment. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly, but carrying a firmness that suggested she had been alone for far too long. "I'm Ethan," he replied, his voice rough from disuse. I thought I was the only one left." Sophia studied him for a moment, then slowly nodded. "I thought the same thing, but it looks like we've both been wrong." They stood there for a moment, not sure how to proceed. Words felt heavy, but the silence was even heavier. Sophia finally broke it with a soft laugh. "I guess we should get moving then." The two of them fell into an easy rhythm after that first encounter. Each day they scavenged together, surviving in a world that no longer seemed to care whether they lived or died. Ethan found comfort in Sophia's presence. She was strong, resourceful, and unafraid to take charge when the situation called for it. Her wit and intelligence were apparent in every conversation, and despite the apocalyptic world around them, she still carried a sense of hope. But Ethan could sense that she was hiding something. There was a shadow in her eyes that she tried to mask with her smiles and laughter. He didn't press her, though. He understood the need for privacy in a world where trust was a rare commodity. One evening, as the sun set behind the crumbling skyline, they sat on the edge of a rooftop, gazing at the world below. The silence between them was comfortable. "You know," Sophia said, breaking the quiet, "I used to think the end of the world would feel like more of a bang. But it's just silence. Just the slow fade." Ethan nodded. "I always thought I'd be scared. But now, I don't know. I'm more tired." Sophia turned to him, her expression softening. "Yeah, me too." There was a long pause, and Ethan could feel the weight of her words. He had been searching for answers to the questions of what had happened, why the world had ended, and what he was supposed to do next. But in that moment, sitting beside Sophia, he realized he didn't need all the answers. Maybe for once it was okay to just be. It wasn't long before Sophia began to let her guard down. One night, as they sat around a fire, she finally spoke the words Ethan had been waiting for. "There's something you need to know about me," she said quietly, her voice trembling slightly. Ethan glanced at her, his curiosity piqued. "What is it?" Sophia took a deep breath, staring into the flames. "I'm not like other people. I wasn't born, well, in the traditional way." Ethan's brow furrowed, confused. "What do you mean?" Sophia hesitated. I'm part of a project, a failed experiment designed to save humanity. I'm not just a survivor. I was created for this world, a world that no longer exists. Ethan was stunned. What? What are you saying? I'm not human, she whispered. Not entirely. They made me, and when everything fell apart, I was the last one left, the only one who survived the process. Ethan struggled to process what Sophia had just revealed. His mind raced, and yet his heart refused to believe it. He had seen her, felt her presence, and he had never once questioned her humanity. Why didn't you tell me before? He asked, his voice softer now, filled with concern. I was afraid you'd leave, she admitted. I didn't want to be alone again. I didn't want you to think I was just a machine. Ethan's heart ached for her. You're not a machine, Sophia. You're not. Sophia looked at him, her eyes filled with unshed tears. You don't know what it's like to feel like you're not human, to know that you were created for a purpose, and that purpose has failed. Ethan reached for her hand, holding it gently in his. But you're here now. You're alive. And that's what matters. Sophia's lips trembled as she tried to smile, but it was clear she was struggling to hold herself together. The weight of her secret, the burden of what she was, had taken a toll on her. Despite the revelation, something inside Ethan told him that he couldn't walk away from Sophia. She had trusted him with the most vulnerable part of her life, and he wasn't going to abandon her now. They had both survived the end of the world for a reason, and together, they could face whatever came next. As they continued their journey through the wasteland, the connection between them deepened. They learned to rely on each other in ways they never had before. And with each passing day, the world outside seemed less important. All that mattered was the small, fragile bond they had created in the face of the apocalypse. Days turned into weeks, and the world they once knew seemed like a distant memory. The streets that had once been filled with the hustle and bustle of life were now nothing more than silent remnants of a civilization that had collapsed. Yet in the midst of all this desolation, Ethan and Sophia found a strange sense of peace. They made their way through the ruins together, the bond between them growing stronger with each passing day. But the world around them was unforgiving. Supplies were running low, and every day felt like a battle. Still, they pressed on, finding solace in each other's company. One evening, as they sat by a fire they had made in the corner of an old library, Ethan looked at Sophia with a quiet intensity. There was something he needed to say, something that had been weighing on his heart for weeks. Sophia, he began, his voice soft but firm. I know you think you're different, that you're not fully human, but I don't care. I never have. Sophia met his gaze, her eyes wide with surprise. What do you mean? I mean, you're more human to me than anyone I've ever met. Ethan continued, his voice steady. You've shown me that even in a world like this, love is still possible. And no matter what you are, no matter what you were created to be, that's all that matters. Tears welled up in Sophia's eyes as she looked away, trying to hide her emotions. I don't know if I can ever truly believe that, she whispered. I was made for this world, but I don't belong in it. Ethan moved closer, placing his hand on hers. You belong with me. That's all I know. And as long as you're by my side, nothing else matters. Sophia's heart skipped a beat at his words. For the first time since the world ended, she allowed herself to believe in the possibility of something more than survival. Maybe, just maybe, love could be the thing that saved them both. The days that followed were filled with quiet moments of reflection and fleeting bursts of hope. But just when they thought they had found a rhythm, the world around them reminded them of its brutal reality. It was on a cold, dreary morning that they encountered the first sign of danger. As they ventured through the remains of a once bustling town, Sophia froze, her eyes scanning the horizon. What is it? Ethan asked, his voice cautious. Sophia's gaze was fixed on something in the distance. There's movement. Someone's out there. Ethan's pulse quickened. For weeks they had been alone, isolated in their little corner of the world. The thought of encountering another living soul, especially one that might not be as kind as them, filled him with both hope and fear. "We need to check it out," Sophia said, her voice steady but filled with an edge of urgency. "Stay close to me." Together they made their way toward the source of the movement, keeping to the shadows as they approached. As they neared the corner of a dilapidated building, they saw them, a group of heavily armed individuals, their faces hidden behind masks, moving methodically through the abandoned town. "They're not like us," Ethan muttered under his breath. "They're dangerous." Sophia nodded, her hand gripping the knife at her side. "We need to be careful. Let's find a way around them." But as they tried to retreat, the group spotted them. A shout rang out, and in an instant, they were surrounded. The masked individuals closed in, their weapons aimed at Ethan and Sophia. "Who are you?" one of the strangers demanded, his voice muffled by the mask. "We don't want any trouble," Ethan said quickly, his heart racing. "We're just trying to survive." The man's eyes narrowed. "Survive, huh? You've got supplies. Hand them over." Sophia's grip tightened on the knife, and she exchanged a glance with Ethan. They had no choice. They couldn't let these strangers take what little they had left. "No," she said firmly, stepping forward. "We're not giving you anything." A tense silence filled the air. The strangers didn't seem ready to back down, and neither did Ethan and Sophia. It was a standoff, and neither side was willing to give up. Suddenly, without warning, one of the armed men lunged forward, his weapon aimed at Ethan. In that split second, Sophia acted. With a swift movement, she knocked the man's weapon out of his hand, sending it flying across the ground. Ethan reacted instantly, grabbing the man and tackling him to the ground. The other strangers hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to proceed. "This isn't worth it," one of them shouted, backing away. "They're more trouble than they're worth." The leader of the group gritted his teeth. "We'll be back," he growled. "This isn't over." And with that, the group retreated, disappearing into the shadows from which they had come. Ethan and Sophia stood there, panting, their hearts still racing from the encounter. They had narrowly escaped, but they knew this was only the beginning. There were other people out there, dangerous people, and they would have to face them sooner or later. But in that moment, as they stood side by side, they both knew something. No matter what came next, they would face it together. In the aftermath of their confrontation, Ethan and Sophia continued their journey, but their world had shifted. The fragile peace they had found was now in jeopardy, and they knew that their survival depended on their ability to outwit and outrun the dangers that lurked in every corner of the wasteland. As they traveled, they found new pockets of humanity, small groups of survivors, some kind, others not so much. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. As long as they had each other, they would keep moving forward. The connection between them grew even stronger. They spoke of their dreams, their hopes, and the world they wanted to build, a world where love could thrive, even in the ashes of the old one. Together, they found reasons to live in a world that had forgotten how to hope. It wasn't just survival that kept them going anymore. It was love. Love that had been forged in the fires of desperation. Love that had brought them together when everything else had fallen apart. And with that love as their guide, they knew they would face whatever challenges lay ahead, together.